Hi, this is Haley Helveston. Taryn and I are about to have a juicy conversation on me being a sex coach at GoTarryn TV.
All right, welcome back, everybody. As you can see side by side, we're joined once again with Haley Helveston, who's also here in Atlanta. Haley, how are you doing out there today?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Yeah, absolutely. Are you ready for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm excited.
What do you have going on? Anything fun?
I am going, hopefully, hiking on Sunday, so I'm excited about that.
That'll be cool. I hope you have good weather. We've had enough rain, especially on the weekends.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, today, this is great to have you back on because I really wanted to catch up with you. Obviously we caught up on the phone about a week ago, but I really wanted to touch base and just figure out how this year's been treating you. And I know we've had a little bit of a shift with a business model change, and that's pretty cool because I'm excited to hear about that. So I guess, you've been on here before, but for the benefit of those who haven't seen you, please go ahead and maybe tell a little bit about yourself and then about the new business model that we're at, please.
Okay, so last time I was on here, I was telling Taryn that I'm a health coach, but now I switched over and I do relationship coaching for women. So I help them have healthier relationships, healthier sex lives, just healthier like overall. And so I focus on my 3 pillars: self-love, sacred sexuality, and mindset.
Very cool. Okay, so let me ask you about the 3 pillars to start with then. Haley, take us through, please, through each and every one of those. Can you talk about the first pillar?
Okay, so first pillar is self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Self-love is really the foundation of our relationships because people treat us the way we treat ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important because I noticed that a lot of women, they are people pleasers, they don't have boundaries, and they don't have self-love. And I'm really passionate about them standing up, standing their power, speaking up for their needs, and really having clear boundaries. Because if you don't have that, you will never have the fulfilling relationship that you can, you're worthy of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. And then number 2, sexuality.
Yeah, so that is just about learning your body and figuring out your needs too. Because, again, I grew up in the South too, and I think that there's still a lot of shame around sexuality. And for a lot of women, obviously, now it's better in 2019, but a lot of women, they still don't know their bodies. Mm-hmm. And so they're not speaking up for their sexual needs. And I always go by the quote, if you're not speaking up in the bedroom, you're not going to speak up in the boardroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Meaning in either area of your life, you're not going to get your needs met.
That's good. That's good. And then finally, last but not least, how'd you come up with the 3rd pillar too?
Yeah, so the 3rd is mindset, and that's important because mindset controls everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where we dig into your beliefs.
That is really, really awesome. And you have so much experience, too, with just knowing you for the little bit of time that I've known you. You've come out and guest spoken several times over at Georgia State. And the last time you came out, that really focused on that 3rd last pillar, which is pretty important. Obviously, that a lot of people, I guess, don't have that mindset. And how important would you say meditation is to folks?
Really important. I've started to meditate for 15 minutes every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important. I mean, think about it. It's like super short, but it's really important because you get centered, you get grounded, and you really, start your day off better.
Yeah, no question about it. You're right. That's very, very important. And then, and emphasizing that, I guess, how do we bring all 3 of them together, like to kind of work synergistically? Like, for example, take us through when you have a new client, a new woman who's just signing up with you, what can they expect when they first work with you?
Okay. So most of the women that I work with are all struggling with the same thing, just unhappy in their career, unhappy in their relationship, lacking self-love. And so first things first is we start out with the just basic, what are your beliefs around, your relationships, and we go through that. Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of like a mixture of all 3, really. But as if they do the 3-month program or the 6-month program, it's really just diving really deep into, okay, individually, what do you need and how can I help you?
That's good. Yeah. And it's great that you offer such different options too. Can you take us through maybe, what would an ideal candidate who would be looking, let's say, to start off with a 3-month program, what would be beneficial maybe in doing a short-term 3-month plan for them?
Okay, so I talked to a woman the other day.
Hmm.
She was really unfulfilled in her sex life. She hated her job.
Hmm.
And she was just like, I don't, typical, I think I'm going to get on an antidepressant, don't know what I'm doing in my life. And so for her, she's perfect.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, because that's my health coaching background too. So we first go through how can we help this person with, just grounding themselves and being more centered and loving themselves. And so we first start with, okay, what is going on in your relationships is causing so much, chaos? Is it maybe you and your husband aren't fulfilled? Is it he's always traveling? And so, or like when a lady told me she just has sex just for him. And so there's that. And so it's really learning to like listen into your body and figure out what are your needs and, really what are your needs in a relationship, but really what are your needs for your life and what do you want?
Hmm. That's good. And, a lot of times the whole cliche and, it's kind of generalized that men, as far as sex goes, it's very much easier for us to compartmentalize it and kind of segment and kind of say, well, love is here and sex is here. But for women, you always hear that it's kind of mixed, that when a woman would have sex, that it's more intimate in love. And I guess that's, definitely a big estimated ballpark generalization that's thrown out there. But do you see that? Like, in other words, for example, do you find that that's true, that to most men, just sex is sex, but to women, it's more emotional and deeper than that?
I think it depends on the person.
Hmm.
I had a workshop last night, and so I was talking with a few of the ladies. I think our society has programmed men and women so differently in terms of sex.
Yeah.
And it's really detrimental because we're dealing with the whole, especially if you grew up religious,
Hmm.
no one discusses it. And so then the woman will get in a relationship or she'll get married and not know her body and really think that, oh, the guy will know how to please me.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he doesn't know the female body.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Then you have this guy that's probably watching way too much porn, and then he is thinking he just knows everything, and he probably doesn't know anything. um, so yeah, I think that it can be true, but I would say the belief that I really think that's not true is the fact that the one that says men are more sexual than women, or men have more of a higher sex drive, because I disagree with that completely. I think women naturally have a high sex drive. I just think when you pile up the layers of the social conditioning, religion, all the shame and guilt, all these different, maybe their career, maybe stress, it just gets in other people's comments and beliefs, it just gets lower and lower.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what I
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting.
think.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. And so when women come to you, I know that there's a lot of anonymity that you keep with them and confidentiality. So is it typical, I guess, that you probably would not have their male partner to talk to you, and anything that you're talking about with her, would it be pretty much in confidence between you? Or is there any time that the man is involved, if that's voluntary on her part?
Hmm. Yes, it's mainly the woman, but I do ask that he's a part of it too.
Oh, okay.
Because
Hmm.
if I'm working for a couple with a couple, I can't not work with him too, because how can we make it better?
That makes sense. Yeah, exactly. No, that's good. I really think that's important. And you had mentioned a couple minutes ago, with the example of a woman who, well, should I just take some antidepressants or maybe some medication? And, holistic health with Haley, you're certainly, just by your name alone, very much of the naturopathic way of fixing and
Mhm.
resolving, going to the source versus just putting a band-aid and a medicine on it. So what do you find with your research and your experience? Is the truth that we're kind of, in America, the culture, just kind of over-medicating, over-prescribing too much?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, think
Hmm.
about it. I think I mentioned this last time we did the video, but I don't even do birth control. Like I'm all natural, everything.
Hmm.
And I think that the lack of knowledge around that is disturbing, and so if you really combine birth control with an antidepressant, then you're going to have low libido. You're going to have all
Mm.
side effects of things that you didn't even know that you were going to be dealing with.
Hmm.
And so I think that, yeah, America's way to, oh, let me grab this to solve all my problems, when really that's maybe helping with a symptom. Like they could be helping with, oh, okay, you're not as anxious. But first off, like, why are you even anxious to begin with?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, and in America, we always hear about. You just mentioned a couple minutes ago, pornography is huge. Arguably, it's maybe the number one reason for the internet, and it's exception to the since the beginning of time. But do you find? I guess just I don't know if this is possible to answer, but just from research or has evidence proven, are men more addicted to porn than women generally?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think some women deal with it too, but definitely more men.
And why is that? Would you say?
I think that all goes back to our conditioning.
Hmm.
Men are conditioned to be more sexual and to explore their sexuality at a younger age.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on pornography? Just, I mean, are you anything against it, support it for therapy, or indifferent to it, neutral, like, in general, I guess?
I personally think people should watch it as little as possible. I mean, if you have to watch it, that's fine. Maybe like a few times, maybe a
Mm-hmm.
month. But I think my problem is like I run into people. Like I don't work directly with just a male individually. I'll send them out to someone, but
Mm-hmm.
I have men message me all the time that they're addicted to porn.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, okay, I'm watching it 6 times or 7 times a day. And do you work with guys too? And I'm like, that's not good that you're watching it that much. I'm going to send you to this person. But I do think that it is a big problem.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess in that case, maybe there is some kind of sex therapy that can come into play. Because, like anything, we know an addiction's not necessarily good in anything, really. You can overexercise and, drink too much water as well. But then, in terms of, working with women, here's another kind of twist and take on this. And I'll ask this first. Let me preface this by telling you I had a real challenge this semester at Georgia State because we had a case study that was really interesting. The
Mm-hmm.
class was split in half, divided, and here was the case scenario set up. There was a person who considered themselves a female, but walked into the female locker room, but they were actually a man, not dressed up as a woman, not a transvestite, not a transgender, but just straight up man, and he identified himself as a woman. The gym allowed him to do so because they're very sensitive to the LGBTQ thing. And I'm not sure where that person falls into, but here's my point. I asked the class, and they were very heated and arguing. Even like it became kind of politicized, so I kind of dropped it. I said, "Let's stop it." But in other words, one half of the classroom was saying, "No, that's absolutely not right. They shouldn't do that." The other half of the classroom was supportive of the person who considered themselves and identified themselves as a woman. This comes down to the whole bathroom gender argument, with Target, North Carolina. So here, there's a long setup, but would you, in terms of helping folks, if they're of that mindset and that gender identification, could you be open to helping those folks too?
Oh, wow. That's so deep. I personally, I don't think I'm even specialized to do with that, but I think
Hmm.
maybe I could refer them to someone.
Okay.
That is very interesting. And I think that it's crazy how you said it was so split in half.
Hmm.
That's really interesting to think about with what's going to happen. And I also want to say this point too,
Hmm.
Taryn, is the fact that I think some of the feminist porn isn't bad, but
Yeah.
the problem is there's not enough of that. Because I actually met with one of those guys that really is a big promoter of that. He makes it a few weeks ago, and he said even if I'm continuing to make video after video, it's not enough compared to the other stuff.
Hmm.
It's the woman and all.
Yeah, I don't frown upon pornographers because actually one of my clients, and he'll stay ambiguous, but he's actually a gay male porn actor, and lives right here in Atlanta, does very well, very successful, and is just literally doing it for an income, for a living. So I'm not going to take anything away from him as well. But with in terms of you just mentioned, going back to the porn too, like with men being more addicted, there certainly is, like you said, more emphasis on porn available for men because everything you see out there advertised, and it doesn't even have to be porn, but like commercials are always geared towards showing pretty women in bikinis and saying, guys, do you want to go out and find a date, or the matchmaking? My God, look at all the matchmaking in Buckhead. It always shows the pretty girls, and it's centered to capturing men and males' attention, obviously. So on the flip side, do you believe that that should be changed, maybe that in marketing and here in America that maybe it needs to be geared more femininely and to not only straight women, but maybe to even lesbians too? Because maybe they're neglected. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that, okay, so if anybody's watching, and you should read this too if you're interested, there's this book called The True Reality of Sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is really powerful in the book. It talks about how they market to us.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I hate that because it's one of the reasons why I don't really watch TV anymore for a variety of reasons. But a lot of it is just because the fact that a lot of it's garbage. But that whole thing with the ads, and it's all a bunch of, like when the girl's they're advertising a burger and she's like in a bikini with eating, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's further triggering people's like reptilian brain,
Yeah, and then if you take it a step further, you see Cialis, Levitra, Viagra, all of those geared towards men. But to my knowledge, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember ever seeing a woman's sexual stimulant advertised anywhere. I mean, is there? I would assume there would be.
No, and that is another thing. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. It's because the fact that, think about it. When men were having all these issues, it was like this big global thing, and Viagra happened like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still different studies I've read, but I think it's like 20% of women have never had an orgasm.
Oh, is that right? Huh.
Yeah, and it's like this global thing that, it just happens, whatever. Like,
wow.
Yeah, we're not going to care about that percentage of women. And I've met these women, and so I know this is real.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, certainly. And as a personal trainer, I've had people very confidentially tell me, open up about sex life, and that's totally fine. Obviously, they could stay in confidence with me, but that's a part of it too. Like I've had some clients, that giggle because it's supposed to be taboo, but they've told me that, the stress is really affecting their sex life and intimacy problems and stuff like that. And they've come to me and said, will exercise work? I said, yeah, absolutely. Because, it shows studies that your endorphins are built and your stress level is reduced, blood pressure will be healthier, and, you'll have optimal wellness. So I think that's a big part of it. But in your, work and what have you, do you find a correlation of the folks who maybe are sexually frustrated that they ever bring up the fact that maybe their exercise is neglected or they're not eating healthily? Does that ever come up into play? I'm just curious, just out of...
No, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I don't think people take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go straight for the, Viagra or whatever.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that plays a huge part. I mean, we talked about last night in my workshop how people are more stressed than ever, but they're not doing anything to deal with the stress.
Right, exactly.
So it's like, okay, it's not going to go anywhere if you don't do it.
Yeah, precisely. So I guess, those sexual stimulants have their place, obviously. But as long as, I guess, you don't overdo it. But then again, if they work with someone like you, then they probably don't even need to take that period, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not for any of that.
Yeah.
If you have to, worst case scenario, you can. But let's go over kind of what you mentioned, your diet, stress level. Are you even working out? Do you meditate? I mean, those are kind of the 4 basic things, Yeah.
No question about it. Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, let's take away the medicine for a second, but talk about kind of your area specialty with the holistic approach. What's your thoughts on maybe natural herbal remedies such as like your yohimbe? I think there's something called horny goatweed and some of the others that are all completely 100% natural. I mean, do you advocate for any of those as well, or what's your thoughts on those?
Maca root, have you heard of that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Right, exactly.
For putting in smoothies or salads.
I mean, do those pretty much, do you find those beneficial, and would those be a healthier alternative if people wanted to try something natural?
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer herbs,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important too. And then, you mentioned too, exercise level, what you're eating. How about sleep? Does that ever come up with the amount of sleep or sleep deprivation that they have?
Oh yeah, listen, everything's affected. And I always say everything is connected. So I think that's really important to take into account how long are you sleeping? Are you even sleeping? Like think about if you have kids.
Hmm. No, that's excellent. Yeah, I mean, you're so right about that. That's very interesting. And going back to your options, they could either do maybe a 3 month short term. What about the people that do you find the clients that maybe need 6 months or even longer, maybe a year? Like, and talk about maybe those clients. If they need long-term help and therapy, my opinion is I think go for it. Just like personal training, I think that any kind of holistic approach to helping you is going to be far better than going to the doctor or, getting prescriptions or like we talked about, medications and drugs. But working with you long-term, how do you envision like a typical long-term loyal client that's going to be doing that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it would
Mm-hmm.
be a session a week,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unlimited access to me, and it would be amazing. Yeah, I think that 6 months is great too, because I personally have worked with coaches
Yeah.
6 months, and I think that's a great length of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can get a lot of transformation in that period, and you have someone to hold you accountable.
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, when I've met a woman who tells me I've never had an orgasm, and then I tell her, okay, well, for the next 30 days, you need to be doing some sort of self-pleasure ritual and doing something to learn your body.
Mm-hmm.
And she is literally accountable to me.
Oh, yeah, that's really good. And, talking about that big A word that you just said, the accountability, that's really important, absolutely, because, they're coming to you obviously for help and professional, help. And so I think that's great to do it long term, be able to track it, progress it, and see, how are they doing, and maybe find out after 6 months, 9 months, or a year where they're at then, and do an evaluation or an assessment too. I mean, I guess that's pretty sound, and that's impressive. You can do that.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, it's important. I mean, I think this is the area, people don't talk about it. When I first transitioned over to at first I called myself a health and sex coach.
Uh-huh.
Then I really jumped the bridge and said, okay, this is what I'm doing. I was really nervous about talking about it publicly too. But once you get really comfortable and you realize that everybody is dealing with some sort of sexual issue,
Mm-hmm.
literally, you're not alone. And there are thousands of people like you, and it's fine. It just makes you realize that this is a huge topic that people aren't discussing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll say this, like right now, currently, I'm taking classes in psychology. We're going over the whole psychosexual development with Sigmund Freud and, kind of the basics in that area. And so this goes back centuries, in terms of if you really think about the beginning of time, obviously, that's always been something that people have talked about with culture. But anyway, as we've noticed here in America, I guess my question to you is, why is it so taboo and people giggle and snicker, whereas, say, Europe or somewhere else, it's very much open and kind of liberally free and, sex is sex. But here in America, we kind of just, and like you said, especially in religious aspects, kind of don't talk about it, do we?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all goes back to religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
from the very beginning of, whatever religious background people grow up in, people were discussing this last night. No one really discusses it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the ladies said that she had a great relationship with her parents, and so they were kind of almost hippies, so they were really open with her about what sex is.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us in the room were like, yeah, I grew up with not knowing anything, and most of the sexuality people learn from porn, doing it, Cosmo, and just like books, and Cosmo's not informative at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, and then porn, I mean, that's the worst place to learn about it. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. We're exposed to it, and again, going back to the internet, that's probably the number one reason why the internet's still doing so well and is going to be around forever and accessible on smartphones and everything else. In terms of, and you said this word a couple of minutes ago, being able to be accessible to your clients and the people you work with. So your clients, I assume, I know this already, but maybe for the benefit of people watching, they don't just have to physically see you in person. They don't have to come to you if they're not in Atlanta, correct? They can see you virtually like we're doing right now?
Yes, yeah, it's through Zoom or Skype. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in fact, I would argue that that's probably going to become your number one niche, is doing this probably the way we're doing it, just because it's just so much more resourceful, logistically it's beneficial and very much convenient to both parties, you and your clients.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that when I first started out, I was like, maybe I can meet people, but The thing is, it's like unless they're like really close to where I live, Atlanta traffic is, you know, and it's great too because I can work with people all over, and I'm so thankful that the internet and Zoom and Skype and all these platforms exist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. And, I think this is great that you're offering this. I don't know anyone else that does this, Haley, and I'm so happy that, you're going to be successful with this and continue to grow this out. And I'll do whatever I can to spread the word and definitely get the network out there and, a pool of other clients for you. So this is, just wonderful to be able to work with you together and kind of see your passion about this because I could definitely tell. I can see it. It exudes. So I guess as we wrap this up, this has flown by so quickly. I've really enjoyed this time. But before we let you go, I got a few more questions for you. What's the best ways folks can reach you directly and learn more about more of your services?
hmm Okay, so I would tell them to email me. It's helvestonhaley@gmail.com, or they can look me up on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is just Haley Helveston. It's HALEY.Helveston, HELVESTON. I go live a lot on Instagram. I'm really active on Instagram. I'm starting to be more active on YouTube. I'm on Facebook too. And I have a website too. It's haleyhelveston.com.
Perfect. Easy enough. We'll put all that you just said on the screen as we fade to black for the people that are watching. So that's great. And again, Haley, this has been so much fun. This 30 minutes flew by so quickly. I can't believe it. A half an hour gone just like that. And I'm excited to get you back on here and see how you're doing in the next month and check in and do another one of these with you because it's always a lot of fun doing this with you.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure, Haley. And again, have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy this spring weather we're going to have. And I hope your hike goes well, too.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Haley. And as we fade to black, here comes Haley Helveston's information right now on the screen. We'll see you, Haley.
Bye.